Hi, everyone. This is John Girardi from Right to Life of Central California. The following presentation was part of an educational event we hosted at Right to Life of Central California last week called Abortion Law in the Biden Era. The speaker for this presentation is Penny Harrington. Penny Harrington is an expert on California public policy matters, and she's going to give this presentation on how the legislative process works in California, as well as highlighting some of the bad bills we have to be on the lookout for this year from the California Legislature. We hope you enjoy this presentation. So I'm now going to introduce our last speaker of the night, and I think a very interesting speaker because of her insight into California politics, which I think a lot of California voters don't even know a lot of these important issues of how the sausage is made in California politics. So to explain some of that for us and to explain some of the bad laws we might be looking at this year, I want to introduce Penny Harrington. Penny Harrington serves as a public policy analyst, assisting conservative organizations in tracking legislation and related issues. She has been passionate about making a difference in support of core conservative values and equipping others to do the same for more than 3 decades. Penny has served as the Director of Legislation for Concerned Women for America of California from 2001 to 2016, and she's currently part of the Biblical Citizenship Committee at her church. Penny also provides voter recommendations, Penny's Picks, for San Diego County, where she lives with her husband of 41 years. They are blessed with 2 grown sons, 2 wonderful daughters-in-law, and 2 beautiful grandchildren. So I'm pleased to welcome my friend, Penny Harrington. Penny, take it away.
Okay, well, I think I'm able to share my screen here. Let's give that a try. All right, so John stole my line with the sausage making, because that's kind of what it's like in California. I have this making law in the Golden State, and we're going to talk a little bit about the overview of the legislative process. And then we're going to focus on a few life bills that are pending this year. There may be more to come. Some of you have been involved in California politics perhaps for a while and know a lot about the procedure, and some maybe not. So I'm going to try to move through this rather rapidly. Make sure your seatbelts are fastened, your tray table's up, and everything's inside the car here, and let's go. The California Legislature is bicameral. It's made up of 40 senators, 80 assembly members, and you can see the breakdown of the parties here. And it also shows you that we obviously have a supermajority of Democrats in the state, and that drives a lot of the decision making, of course, in the state. So I'm wondering if each of you individually knows who your state senator and assembly member is in each situation, and I hope that you do. If you don't, this is a website that you can go to, findyourrep.legislature.ca.gov, and you can find out the legislator. There's a link to their website, their contact information. These are things that you're going to want to know when an issue comes up, to say, contact your legislator for because a committee hearing is coming up, or because there's a floor vote, or you just have something you want to share. I think it's very important. We elect these people to office, and whether you voted for or against the person who's currently representing you, it's part of the process that we contact our legislators when we have issues that we want to discuss. Each year, our legislators will pass. Each one has about 20 bills per year, and you multiply that. You can, if you do the quick math, you'll find that we have, yes, about 2,000 bills a year, almost 2,500 this year, including the resolutions, 2,472, but who's counting this particular session. And each one of these will follow a path that looks something like what's on the screen here, and it's going to go through to both houses, and it can fail at any point, the committee hearing or the floor. And so we're going to go look individually at each part of this path and move rather quickly so we can get to some of the bills that are going on. The introduction of a bill starts with an idea. And that may be an idea that the lawmaker comes up with, him or herself. A constituent may come forward with an idea for a piece of legislation, or an organization. In California, we find that a lot of the abortion-related legislation that amounts to, of course, an expansion of abortion in our state is actually sponsored by Planned Parenthood or NARAL or a similar organization. And then they will draft the legislation and they'll find an author to carry it for them. This can be both on good and bad legislation, obviously, but this is the way it occurs a lot of the time. And either that draft bill will be able to be submitted, or the Legislative Council will make sure that the proper code sections are addressed in the piece of legislation. And once that's been done, the author will introduce the legislation by what's called its first reading. After that, the legislation will go to the Rules Committee for assignment. The Rules Committee, pretty powerful, will determine which of the policy committees are going to be hearing the bill. There may be just one, there may be two. We call that a double referral. And one really concerning thing that happened just earlier this week, in fact, on Monday, that in the Senate, there was an action to remove transparency in that House. Usually when a bill is introduced, it has 30 days to kind of cure. So people, like any policymaker, any individual, can look at it, start getting an idea of what the bill is all about, get an idea, some strategy. Well, that was changed to 72 hours. That's not much transparency now in the state of California, at least in the Senate. This has not occurred yet in the Assembly. When the bill gets to the policy committee, the supporters and opponents will strategize. How are we going to support this bill? How are we going to get it to pass? Or what can we do to hold this back? Individuals and organizations can submit letters of support or opposition to the committee itself. And this is when you see this golden arrow here, this is where you can share your views. Of course, you can do that anytime, but this is a key point at a policy committee point where you can share your views with letters, webmail, or phone calls. And one thing that COVID actually did for us is made the committee hearing process a little bit more transparent and friendly for individuals like you and me to be able to take part in the hearing. And you can submit your letters through, this is a picture of the State Assembly Health Committee website. You can submit your letters directly to the committee. There's a one-time registration. You pick a username and a password, and it's good from now on. And you can submit a position letter rather, in the form of a PDF document directly to the committee. And those are actually visible to legislators as they look at it. And the committee will then they will note the number of letters from individuals. They will list on the analysis of the bill the letters that come from organizations, your pro-life organizations. Very important that letters get in. So those would be visible. And this is what it looks like when you go to that portal. You would be signing in with an email and password, and then uploading your document. Pick up the measure that you want to support or oppose it, and submit a letter. It's a lot simpler than it sounds, and it's really great that we are able to take part in that process. At the policy committee hearing, there will be testimony from both sides. It's limited to 2 speakers on each side, 3 minutes each, and then there's discussion. And one of the things we like our legislators to do, especially on our pro-abortion bills, where usually we're on the defensive, in the life situation, is the discussion allows anyone on the committee who is in the minority, in this case usually, to be able to ask questions and get more information. Anytime that we can get the truth put in the record, the truth about life, it's a good thing. And now, because of COVID, oddly enough, we can actually provide from our homes, from our desktops, from our kitchen tables, what's called a Me Too. Yes, that's you. You can be a Me Too at a committee hearing. And that just means that when you listen or watch a hearing, you're going to be able to, this is the health committee again. This is what you will see. Happens to be the Senate Education Committee. I wanted to show it to you because when you're watching the hearing, you're going to see a participant call-in number and an access code, and you can actually take part. It's a long wait. be ready with some, popcorn and soda or something, or whatever's going to keep you going for a little while, because committee hearings can be long. I'm sure John can attest to that. But you are then at one point, after the discussion, there will be an opportunity for anyone who is listening and part of the phone call and who is registered in the phone call to say, my name is Penny Harrington, I'm from the San Diego area, and I oppose this bill. That's all you can say, but you can actually get your name in the record and take part in the process. At the outcome of the policy committee hearing, the bill will pass, the bill will fail, or it could be reconsidered, where it might be able to come back. If it passes, it will move perhaps to another policy committee, or it will move, if it has a fiscal component, to the appropriations committee. If it doesn't, it will make its path to the floor. Any bill that has a fiscal component that's going to cost some money to the state will have to go through the appropriations committee in the house that it's in. And after that committee, it will pass either to the floor, or it may fail, or if it does have a considerable amount of funding needed, it will be placed in suspense until the budget revision comes out in May. And often it will go, even if there is a monetary component to a bill, I think the amount is about $50,000. If it's less than that, it will often just get passed out to the floor, because that's small change in terms of our fiscal committee process. Another time that you get a chance to share your views is on the floor. Very important that you contact your member of the Assembly or the Senate when a key bill is on the floor. Contact them, call their office. Phone calls are great. Keep the phones ringing off the hook. You can also contact them through web mail. If you're in their district office, you can go in and speak with people there. It's just great to take part in the process and let them know. Even if they don't agree with you, they need to hear what you have to say. And so there will be a second reading. And then a couple of days after that, there will be a third reading, and that's when the floor vote occurs. And there's generally discussion before the vote takes place. And that's another time that the truth can be spoken into the record. So you can get your assembly member or senator to ask questions or speak out for or against a bill on the floor. If it passes, it will go through the process in the second house. If it fails, it's dead. But an author can also, if he or she doesn't feel like he has enough votes, can also place it on an inactive file to be brought back at a later date. Second verse, same as the first. It goes through the second house again now. We've been all the way through the first house, and now we're going through the second. And it's basically the same process. Again, make your views heard in the policy committee at the floor vote. If it passes the second house and it was amended, it will have to go back for a concurrence vote in the first house. If it doesn't, then it will end up being enrolled and going to the governor. If it fails, it's gone. Those bills that were in the inactive file in a year like this is the first year of a 2-year session. It may actually be held over if the author doesn't think he or she has the votes to make it happen, or maybe the governor's saying, I don't know about that. You can hold it over for the next year, but that's just in the first year of a 2-year session. And that's where we are right now. We're in the first year of a 2-year session. When the governor gets the bill, he has 12 days to make a decision on it, or since most bills come at the end of the session to his office, at that point, he has 30 days to either sign the bill, veto the bill, or if he does nothing, it will become law without his signature after 30 days. So when you contact the governor, in a lot of these cases, the key word is veto. You can't just depend on the fact that he might not sign it. It will become law in California without his signature if he does not veto a bill. So you'll want to share your views with the governor on whether you want him to sign or veto a bill when we get to that point. The final step after that, if he has signed it, is enrollment and chaptering. Most of the laws in California take place January 1st of the next year, or if it's an urgency measure, it will take place after it's signed by the governor. There are various deadlines throughout the year in California. This is just a picture of the legislative calendar. When you go to the website of one of the houses, you can get a copy of the deadlines and the policy deadlines that are important. For example, we just passed the February 19th bill introduction deadline. We will have a policy committee deadline on April 30th for bills that have money attached to them. May 7th is the non-fiscal bill deadline, and then all bills have to be out of their house of origin by June 4th. Then we come back and the second half of the session continues. July 14th is the policy deadline for the second house. They get to go on recess from July 16th to August 16th. That's a great time to visit your legislator in their district office. The last day to pass any bills this year is September 10th, and there's that 30 days for the governor to act on a piece of legislation before October 10th when it's all over. A few other procedures, amendments can be done during the committee process, on the floor process even. And a lot of bills right now that were introduced in that 2,500 bills or so are what we call spot or intent bills. They just have a little bit of language in them that says it's the author's desire to provide change in language in this particular code area. Well, that official language will then be dumped in over the next week or two as an amendment, and then we'll find out what some of these bills are. So we don't really know what all the bills in California are about just yet, because there will be amendments coming up. And then there's the gut and amend. John wanted me to be sure to tell you about this interesting little end run. The gut and amend process is sometimes a legislator will use a little sleight of hand to move a languishing measure forward. And famously in 2012, Christine Kehoe took an abortion bill of hers that had failed, and it was to expand a pilot project in Northern California to allow nurse practitioners and other clinicians to provide aspirations or perform aspiration abortions. Well, she wasn't getting anywhere with that bill. It had passed the Public Safety Committee, but failed in the Business and Professions Committee. But rather than accept defeat, she decided to extend the pilot program and pulled a fast one. She took one of her other bills that was languishing. It was actually a 2-year bill at that time. It was about amounts of copper in marine paint or something, nothing to do with the life issue, but she gutted it and dumped the language for her abortion expansion bill into it, and it passed. Voila, the gut and amend. So that's the procedure that can sometimes happen. On a 2-year bill, the bills that don't make it through, as I mentioned, the entire process will be put on hold, and then they have to speed through the process early in the following year in most cases. Keep an idea, maybe jot down some of these websites. The Assembly website, simply assembly.ca.gov. The Senate, the same, senate.ca.gov. The governor, you're going to want to be able to contact him. It's great. There's a contact tab on his website at gov.ca.gov. And if you really want to track legislation, you can actually subscribe to a bill that you're interested in by going to this leginfo.legislature.ca.gov, look up the bill number and subscribe to it, and you'll get an email every time there's a change to the bill. So let's look at a few of the bills that are up this year. There are about 3 bills and 1 resolution that I want to quickly go over with you, and you might want to jot down the numbers of these bills so you can subscribe to them and keep track. Assemblywoman Sydney Kamliger from Culver City has introduced the PEACE Act. Where would we be without acronyms, right? Protecting Equal Access to Care Everywhere Act. Well, it sounds great, doesn't it? Equal care everywhere. But what she's actually done is she is pointing at Catholic hospitals and saying not enough is being done at Catholic hospitals or faith-based medical institutions because they place restrictions on the procedures that can be done there based on their religious beliefs. This cannot stand, says the Assemblywoman. So it's important, this might be an important bill that you would want to track this year. She says in her fact sheet for the PEACE Act that some of the procedures that are being prohibited in their facilities are reproductive care, access to contraception, surrogacy, assisted reproduction, and other items that are contrary to their religious teachings. So this is really a direct attack on faith-based hospitals, forcing them to comply. There is not a committee assignment on this bill yet, but it will probably go to the Assembly Health Committee and likely the Business and Professions Committee. I'm guessing that it will probably be a double referral for AB 705. SB 245 is the Abortion Accessibility Act. Now, we all know that abortion is highly accessible in California already. And you might wonder, well, what in the world could they possibly do to make abortion more accessible? I mean, to go back to Dr. New's comment about the age of minors being able to have abortions without their parents' consent, in California, that's 7th grade. That's our school's ability to let students out for confidential medical services without the parents' knowledge even. So a 12-year-old girl can go get an abortion without her parents even knowing about it. Now, so what more could they ask for? Well, the Abortion Accessibility Act prohibits insurance companies from charging copays, requiring satisfaction of deductibles, or requiring any other payments for abortion services. So we're already paying out of our tax dollars for Medi-Cal abortions, and now insurance companies are going to be required to make all abortions, every dollar of an abortion, free. And I was taking notes when Dr. New was talking, and he said, the more taxpayer funding, the more abortions. Well, the freer the abortion, we can expect that the more abortions that we're probably going to have as a result of this bill. It's been assigned to the Senate Committee on Health. And right here, you can see the members of the committee. There are 2 members in this committee who are Republican members. The other 9 are Democrat. When you have a supermajority, that follows through to the committee process. Some committees only have 1 Republican member. So here is the Health Committee. There's no hearing date on this bill yet, but there again, there's the submit position letter link for you to be able to submit a letter. The 2 Republican members are Senators Melissa Melendez and Shannon Grove. If there are ever a couple outspoken women in the Senate, those 2 are likely to ask a lot of good questions of the senator when she brings this up. They're very staunchly pro-life. SB 380, this is the last of the policy bills, and then there's just a quick resolution. I'm almost done. SB 380 has to do with the end of life. We're on the other spectrum of life here. Senator Susan Eggman of Stockton has proposed this. Many of us remember that the End of Life Option Act was passed in 2016. And we were all concerned at that point that there was a slippery slope to physician-assisted suicide, and it was only going to get worse in our state, and here we go. SB 380 will remove the sunset clause in the End of Life Act. So it was supposed to sunset in 2026. This removes that, it repeals it entirely. And so we will have assisted suicide until it's repealed in some other way. It also lowers the bar for the mental health exam, which there's not even a mental health exam required before a physician prescribes and the pills, the prescription for someone to end his or her life. But if the physician says that a mental health examination is warranted, it lowers the bar to where a clinical social worker can provide that mental health examination, not just a psychiatrist or a psychologist. It also does some other things. It removes the requirement of timing for the oral request for the drugs. A physician has to, if he or she does not want to participate in the end of life care, so to speak, because they took an oath that said first do no harm, they have to refer to a doctor who will. Sounds a little bit like the NIFLA decision, and I'm wondering if that might come into play. Getting a little nod from John over there, I think that, so we will see what happens with SB 380. Again, it was referred to the Health Committee, not a hearing date on this, so the same players in that committee. Finally, every year there are 2 resolutions celebrating Roe v. Wade. The Assembly has already passed theirs. It was H.R. 10. SR 6 is the Senate version. Nancy Skinner has brought this up, but everybody else who is pro-abortion is jumping on as a co-author. And this has been assigned to the Judiciary Committee, but I would say at this point, just go ahead and call your state senator and ask him or her to oppose the resolution. Again, I would suggest if you're interested in any of these measures or others that you subscribe to them and track their progress. You'll get an email. And then my charge to you is that a couple of things. First of all, not a lot is going to change in California until the complexion of the makeup of the legislature changes. So let's keep that in mind in the next election year that we have, that we might have a more pro-life legislature in California. And then also our tasks individually are to learn, like we are tonight, about the process here and elsewhere, to pray, because this is a battle that's bigger than flesh and blood. It's powers and principalities, and it's the creation of life that we don't have control over. God does at the beginning and at the end. And then it's up to us to act. So we learn, pray, and act and participate in the process. Dietrich Bonhoeffer said the ultimate test of a moral society is the kind of world that it leaves to its children. So let's determine that we're going to leave our children and grandchildren a world and a moral world that respects life. So thanks very much. Learn, pray, and act.
We thank you so much for watching this presentation from Right to Life of Central California. If you want to support Right to Life of Central California, we encourage you to go to rtlcc.org. You can learn more about our organization there, read some of our publications, and if you'd like, even drop us a quick donation. You can also access this presentation as a podcast from our podcast feed. Just look for Right to Life Radio on the Apple Podcasts app or the Stitcher podcast app. We hope you will share this with your friends and loved ones, and we thank you so much for watching this presentation.